Okay, do we begin now? Okay, my name is Dr. Ronald Alexander, and I'm a leading edge mindfulness-based mind-body psychotherapist. I specialize in somatic trauma healing therapy, and I'm an executive leadership coach practicing in Santa Monica since 1976, where I focus half of my time on working with talent in the television, film, music industries, as well as the tech and .com industries, doing both organizational and individual coaching. I became involved in the mindfulness movement in 1975, and I was one of the early pioneers in teaching mindfulness meditation at UCLA in Los Angeles. And I continue to pair mindfulness meditation with both creativity training, executive and leadership coaching, and mindfulness-based psychotherapy. My own background is I'm ordained as a lay Zen Buddhist from the Zen tradition. I've studied extensively Vipassana meditation, Tibetan Buddhist meditation, the non-dual meditation, and have been active in teaching mindfulness to the lay audience as well as psychotherapists, medical doctors, and nurses, both nationally and internationally. I travel extensively, Japan, Australia, Europe, and soon to be China once COVID wraps up. Okay, so that's a little bit of my background. Oh, and I have a book coming out in June, a new book. My first book was Wise Mind, Open Mind. And my new book is Core Creativity, the mindful way to unlock your creative self. And that's being published by Rowman and Littlefield, and it'll be out in June. It's a fabulous book. It has some interview segments in it from leading edge creatives in film, music, and television. So for today, we'll start with, well, what is core creativity and how do you access it? So historically, there's always been a variety of forms of creativity, and because creativity is creative, we always start with thought is creative and thought is generative. From the core creativity perspective, I take it one step deeper and more subtle, that not only is thought creative, but when you go inside to access core creativity, you're paying attention to what you dream about, what you envision. You pay attention to images, storylines, words, colors, pictures, and you take time through some form of meditation. Now, in the book, I primarily stress, because my wheelhouse, my bailiwick is mindfulness, as well as hypnosis and self-hypnosis, that those are very direct pathways to access your core creativity. When I was 22, I was trying to make a decision. I was going to school on the East Coast of the United States, and I was trying to decide whether I should take a graduate program in the South or a graduate program in the West Coast of California. And so I asked my dreams to give me some inner wisdom, because I know that in addition to the thought is creative, dream world, because it comes directly from the creative unconscious, that you can learn and you can receive a tremendous amount of information. and wisdom from your internal unconscious mind. So one night I was in Amherst, Massachusetts, and I decided to do this little exercise, which was you tap on the side of your forehead on the right side, and it says, "When I awaken, I will receive a series of wisdom dreams, and these wisdom dreams will reveal to me what is the core pathway for me to take." And so over the course of a week, I had a variety of dreams. And one of the dreams was I was in a covered wagon, old-fashioned cowboy and Indians covered wagon. And I was sitting in the driver's seat, holding the reins of these horses. And we were going up over the Rocky Mountains. And we were coming down the mountains in California. And there's a place called the Donner Pass. And from this place in the Sierra Nevada mountains, I could see the Golden Gate Bridge. And I turned and I said to someone, and I think it was my girlfriend at the time, I said the funny old line, "There's gold in them there hills. There's gold in them there hills. In the Golden Gate." And I had this internal awareness of like, well, the gold is in California, and the Golden Gate is the bridge to the next part of my life that will contribute to abundance, to creativity, to further education. And so in that moment, I woke up and it was absolutely crystal clear. I'm going to go to the graduate school program in California and follow the gold. And of course, one thing that I learned from the famous hypnotherapist, the Wizard of the Desert, Milton Erickson, in Phoenix, Arizona, I consulted with him. And I've studied his teachings for the last 40 years. And he said, there's always something happening. And the mind is always up to something interesting. So the mind is always up to something interesting, and the unconscious is always percolating and bubbling up. So how do you access that percolating wisdom that's inside of you and that percolating core creativity? And so it's important to take time each and every day to close your eyes. You can sit comfortably like this. Some people prefer, particularly if they've had trauma in their life, asking them to close their eyes can be a triggering event. And so it's much better for anybody who's had a lot of trauma and or OCD is to have them look outside, like right outside. I live in what I call my Zen home, and I'm looking out to oak trees and beautiful blue sky. So some people, it's important to access their unconscious by going into the big blue sky, and we call that in Tibetan Buddhism the big view. For the rest of us, we can close our eyes and just for a minute, that's all we'll do, 60 seconds, is just close your eyes. And the very first step that I write about in my book, Core Creativity, is called, you go into a state of receptivity. And there's a mudra in yoga called Gyan Mudra, thumb and first finger together, palms facing up, you rest them in your lap, and you focus here on the space between the eyebrows, and that's known as the third eye. And the third eye is very visionary. And it's also very, very deeply intuitive. And so you just rest your awareness. Your eyes focus and roll up at the third eye point, and you just simply rest in the very first stage of core creativity, and that's receptivity, that you welcome entering into a state, the yin state, yin and yang active, yin receptive, feminine, quieting down, slowing down, respecting and embracing the gentle, and respecting and embracing being receptive. There's a meditation that I teach, and I learned it from one of my mentors, Ramdas, and I changed it, and he taught it in a much more simpler way, and then I added on to it. And we did a tape together in one of my CD series that you can get on cdbaby.com. And the meditation is slow down, and you take a breath in and you take a breath out. Slow down and wait. Take a breath in, take a breath out. Wait in order to listen. Take a breath in, take a breath out. Listen in order to hear. Take a breath in, take a breath out. Hear in order to fine-tune what you see. Take a breath in, take a breath out. See in order to discover what resides inside. See, turning the focus inside of what resides inside. And there's a tremendous wellspring of creative resources that are inside all of us. You don't have to be an artist. You don't have to be a painter, a poet. You don't have to be a writer. I happen to be a writer. You don't have to play the piano. I play the piano. To be a core creative. Sometimes I'm counseling mothers, I even suggest to them that they can be creative about how they caretake their children, how they do homeschooling. They can be creative at how they interact with the other mothers who are in the carpool. They can be creative at how they cultivate the richness of the learning environment for their children or their family. Anyone can be creative. And everybody is, in their own special way, a core creative. Now, most of the time people say to me, but I don't know what I'm creative at. And so what I say is, well, are you curious about learning how to go inside and to tap into and discover your core creativity? Because that's the first and most important step, is learning to go inside and learning to receive. Okay, next question. No, you don't have to be an artist to be creative. As I just mentioned, we're all creative. What you have to embrace is that I am a creative. I have creativity inside of me. I will be creative. I welcome creativity coming into my life, and I welcome expending energy outwardly into my life that's going to be creative and productive. So a second equation I have is energy in, taking time to go inside, whether it's watching your dreams and writing about them, daily meditation, highly recommend, once a day, ideally twice a day, 12 to 20 minutes. And so energy that you go inside for receiving, and then energy outside for activation and for doing. Creativity needs to be manifested. There's a step. After receptivity comes activation, putting into action what you've been receiving. So you have to take time to listen and to receive. Next question is, how can core creativity help someone make changes in their personal, relational, and business lives? Well, if you think about that thought is creative and your unconscious is creative, as you mine down into your core creativity and you're able to grasp the fire and light the flame, the ignition of your own creativity, it will naturally flow into your personal relationships, where you get curious about, well, how can I improve this relationship? How can I make this the best possible relationship that I've ever had? When you're dealing in business, there's three realms that in my Art of Leadership, Mindful Leadership workshop that I teach. We're usually either managing someone down or you're managing people across as a kind of equal, and or you're managing people up. So when you embrace that you are creative, every interaction that you have with somebody, you're using your mouth and your mind and your heart and your unconscious to both create, recreate, restructure, and reform. So whatever's not working, you need to assess and to identify, well, what's not working here? In these conversations for action that I've been having, whether they're down, across, or you're managing up to your own superior, how can I use my ears to become a space for listening? And how can I use my mouth creatively to be a space for the articulation of what will be more productive, effective, and creative? So we assess for what's not working first, identify it. Then in meditation, we envision those conversations moving from what hasn't worked to coming up with words and images using, for example, I oftentimes use a lot of feeling tones when I'm communicating with people. How I feel about this, or, oh, that's warming me up, or oh, it's kind of cooling me off, as a way to invent a more creative and productive conversation for action. And business, all business is generative. One of my mentors when I was a very, very young man, in my first 2 years of college, and he was a old retired dean of a major university, and he came to teach at a community college. And he said, Ron, words are creative and words are generative in business. And success in business is formulaic. That whatever successes you've had up to this point in your life, if you utilize those formulas and you identify the formulas of what you have had conflict or difficulty or what has not worked, you identify those and you write them down. You then reformat and you transform from the domain of not working into the more transformative domain of being a core creative, of creating ways in business to be more successful, as well as to follow the formulas in business that you've cultivated where you've gotten success. So creativity, you can even dream when you have business decisions to make, or should I invest this amount of money, or should I not invest money right now? Go inside, dream about it, focus and meditate each day. Come out of the head and into the heart, into the somatic sense of self and well-being. There was a phrase in the 60s by one of the Esalen Institute teachers that long preceded me, because in the early 70s I was still an undergraduate. But there was a quote, and it was by the founder of Gestalt therapy, Dr. Frederick Perls, and his wife Laura. Lose your mind and come into your sensations. So lose the mind, meaning come down out of just the pure thinking mind and identify and use the breath to feel the wisdom of the body. That there is great wisdom and there's great core creativity that resides in your body. And our mission, if you choose to accept it, as I have, is to meditate once or twice every day, to spend time at the watering well of that wise creativity. But to receive, you have to take time to slow things down, turn off everything around you, and again, look outside if you want to meditate with your eyes open, or close your eyes and go inside and just listen. Just wait. Don't even wait with expectation. There's a phrase from an ancient Chinese master, the third Zen patriarch, Hinzing Ming. Cease striving, and then there is self-transformation. Give up effort, and creativity will abound. Now, it doesn't mean give up effort like and don't do anything, because we all know if you just sit up in the mountain or sit in a cave or sit in a meditation pillow all day long, the bank's going to come and foreclose your house and take away your car. What it means is give up the expectation in the mind, the demand to know, and venture into what I read about in my book called Creativity, is venture into not knowing and not doing, and venture into not needing to do and not needing to know. Begin to explore the gold of core creativity in not needing to do and not needing to know, which takes you into what I call the fertile void. You know, the void is empty. In meditation, we actually orient, just orient, we don't strive, we just orient as a marking point to arrive at emptiness, which is the void. You know, to become empty of myself, my needs, my wants, my desires. The fertile void is that when you trust to spend enough time slowing down to await and to listen to the wisdom of core creativity that resides from within, that the emptiness becomes actually fertile. And that there's a passionate internal fertility in all of us. What's needed is to take the time to slow things down to visit with one's inner life, taking time to explore what resides inside of you. Now, for example, you may ask, well, where does creativity come from? Well, I'll tell you an interesting story. One musician I don't know, one musician I do know. First musician I don't know is the famed Paul McCartney. One night in the early 60s, he was dreaming, middle of the night, he wakes up, tells his girlfriend he's having this incredible song. And he gets up, plays it out at the piano, and it's the melody to Yesterday. Speaks it into a tape recorder or wrote it down, went back to bed, gets up in the morning. The first thought is, oh my God, I think I dreamt about a masterpiece last night, and I don't know. Where is it? But fortunately, he either had recorded it or written it down. I understand that he would keep a journal, notes by his bed, a tiny little recorder. And he gets up and he plays Yesterday. And then he starts going around London for an entire month, basically asking people if this orphan song, if somebody owned it, because he couldn't at first believe it was his. And nobody adopted it. And then he realized, I got to record this thing. That's a classic example of core creativity being accessed through the dream world. A musician that I have the good fortune to meet socially and interact with after one of the concerts in Dublin in 1993 in September was The Edge, the lead guitarist from U2. And we were sitting there with his wife, Morley, and we were just talking about dreams and creativity, where does sound come from, Mozart, Beethoven, how they would hear the entire symphony, often simultaneously. And they would each be in their own way recording, like the drum section or the violins, the strings, or the trumpets, trombones, but they would be hearing the whole thing simultaneously. And he shared with us that prior to them going to Berlin to make the record Achtung Baby, which was a tremendous departure from the Joshua Tree album, and the direction, the sound, everything, the lyrics of their music. He was just hearing melodies, sounds, dreaming about them. And I said to him, oh, I think you've naturally tapped into what I'm writing a book on called Open Mind. And, my first book was Wise Mind, Open Mind. And so I coined this phrase, open-minded consciousness. And that open mind, when you enter into open mind, you access a state of core creativity that all of the greats have accessed and been able to listen, and to slow down, and to receive from. The last thing I want to say before I take some questions is, well, what blocks us from our core creativity? Well, the number one thing that blocks us is whenever you say to yourself something that from now on, I don't ever want you to say, which is, I'm not creative, or other people are creative, or I don't play an instrument, or I don't paint, so I'm not creative. First and foremost, it's usually your own mind and your own negative self-view that blocks you from your creativity. Second is what blocks you from your creativity is when you take time to inquire into creativity, into the inner self. If you get restless or you listen to the negative thinking in your mind that, oh, this is foolish, this is stupid, I've got better things to do, I should be checking my email, I should go and paint the outside of the house. I had a colleague, and he once told me he got this 6-figure advance to write a new book, and that he spent the whole summer painting the outside of his house. And this was an executive, and house painting was something he never did. And he was doing it because he was in fear, and he was letting the fear run him. And so the fear fueled his resistance, and his resistance manifested in painting the house. So that by the end of the summer, he had to give back the $100,000. And so we were talking. I suggested that recontact your publisher, and then in time, instead of letting the fear run you, is to work with that fear in meditation and to focus on what you're afraid of, and to label and identify those thoughts, what you're afraid of, and then run it back through. What are you afraid of if you finish writing the book, of how that's going to add to your platform, into your brand, in your business, and of yourself? What are you afraid is going to come to you? What are you afraid of you're going to grow out of and grow towards? And we both laughed, because everything that he was afraid of growing towards was all great stuff. Business expansion, more referrals, more speaking opportunities, higher fees, more creative ideas that he would have flushed through in the writing of the book. And I met up with him a couple of years later, and the book was published, and everything in his business, he went from 5 people to having a staff and teams of like 30, 35 people. So it's really important to identify that the main block to core creativity is fear. And this, I think it's a Nelson Mandela quote, but it could actually be a Marianne Williamson quote. And I say that because somewhere along the internet, for years, it had been authored that it was Nelson Mandela, but I think years later, Marianne Williamson was able to rebrand. And I think the quote goes something like this: our greatest fear is of becoming what we're capable of becoming. But that's what we're really afraid of, which is not a fear of failure. See, it's the total opposite. It's a fear of success and abundance. Okay, shall we take a few questions? Well, mindfulness and other forms of meditation are important to accessing your creativity, because you have to have a direct pathway. Mindfulness meditation is 2,500-year-old form of meditation that the Buddha created, and he utilized it as a way of activating his own enlightenment, sitting under the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya, India. And so when he came out of his enlightenment experience, he went to Sarnath, India, to the deer park, and began to teach his very first sutra, which is the Satipatthana Sutra. And Satipatthana means how to access and gain wisdom or insight into the nature of the self. And so mindfulness meditation is a wonderful tool because all it necessitates at the beginning level, there's always a beginning, an intermediate, and an advanced level of any meditational system. So I'm not going to say it's just like a simple technique, but at the beginning level, it's a very simple technique. As I was saying, the two best ways to practice mindfulness meditation is you focus on the tip of the nose or on the third eye, and you close your eyes, and on the in-breath, you mentally repeat rising, and on the out-breath, you repeat falling away. And then in the breath between arising and falling away, you repeat awaiting. And so that's one mindfulness tool. The second mindfulness tool is on the in-breath, abdomen, lungs, you repeat the word in. On the out-breath, emptying the lungs, emptying the abdomen, you repeat the word out. And then in that in and out breath, where you're awaiting, is you say spacious awareness, spacious awareness, spacious awareness. Because in spaciousness, you're able to tap in to that inner well of core creativity. Other forms of meditation, 300, 400 forms of meditation, all valuable, all useful. A lot of people practice transcendental meditation. Transcendental was a meditation form created by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, Indian born, and a great Indian guru saint. And it utilizes mantra. And so that instead of saying rising and falling, you repeat a particular mantra. Like, for example, a TM mantra is hum, and then on the out breath, sa. Hum, sa. And after 15 minutes of repeating hum and sa, or 20 minutes, then you just simply rest and await. And Transcendental Meditation says that you should imagine that the mind is like a lake and the thoughts are like ripples on the surface of the lake. And the mantra is like a small stone that drops into the lake, and it drops beneath the rippling activity of the mind and goes all the way to the bottom. And then as it settles into the sand of the lake, that settling into the sand is where the core creativity and the internal wisdom and the transcendental knowledge emerges from. So practicing meditation, mindfulness especially, I'd say start out with 3 minutes and then add a minute a day and see how you're feeling around 12 minutes. And if you're feeling good, keep a minute a day and get up to 20 minutes, morning and evening. My own meditation practices, I do 40 or 45 minutes in the morning. And then I do 20 to 30 minutes in the evening to kind of come down from the day. And I also use meditation in between my patients so that I can clear my consciousness and my mind so I can be fresh with the next patient or the next person that I'm coaching from a leadership or executive perspective. Okay, any other questions? Okay, the question is, the older I've gotten enlightened, the more jumbled are the visions, including my dreams. Thus, how do I discern? Well, I'll answer the back end question first because it's the easiest to answer. Keep writing down your dreams, but have a separate page in my dream journal, but in my mindfulness journal, in my first book, Wise Mind, Open Mind, I have a chapter on how to write and use a mindfulness journal. In that book, I write about the importance of doing 10, 15 minutes of free-flowing journal pages every morning, particularly after you meditate. Stream of consciousness, sense of nothing. But have a separate page every day for your dreams. And then what I do is once a week is I go back through the dream journal part, and I pull out and I try to sequence dreams during the week and then by the month. And I even oftentimes look back through the whole year to pull out some of the gold and some of the threads that my unconscious is speaking to me about. So I think it's important when you have jumbled up visions and jumbled up dreams is to sort them out, and it's like you're cataloging them, indexing them, to then see how they piece together, because dreams are stories. Your creative unconscious is trying to communicate to you every time that you fall asleep and you naturally dream. And so it's trying to communicate things that you need to resolve from the outer world, from the existential world that may have been unfinished and incomplete. And then it also simultaneously, the wisdom of the unconscious, it's so rich and so deeply textured. It's trying to give you guidance, create healing, give you guideposts to look at, help to make decisions that the conscious mind is having trouble making. The inner unconscious mind is much greater wisdom guru for us to spend our time with and to listen to. As you get more enlightened, okay, let's break down the word enlightenment, first of all, because what one person's meaning of enlightenment might be different from another person's. For me, enlightenment is about simply learning over time to become more aware, to let go of the things in my life that I do that no longer work, that are no longer nourishing, that no longer have meaning, that no longer give me energy. And to let go of all fixed notions of what I think it means to be enlightened. To let that go. Because when the Buddha became enlightened, he had to let everything go. And that was his enlightenment. He was taunted and tortured by all the divine forms of Mara and lust fantasies and being offered kingdoms and all of that. And he had to let go of all that. So enlightenment is about letting go of the past and fully embracing the here and now, fully embracing the moment, and becoming wiser about doing the things that make us feel good, letting go of the things that don't make us feel good, becoming wiser about what works and how I work in a way that's generative, that generates friendships and creative success, what generates abundance in my life, what generates generative thinking, what generates compassion and kindness, what generates a giving back to the world. And so unjumbling the things that one might be feeling confused about could start with by writing all those jumbled thoughts or jumbled spiritual perspectives down and seeing if you can catalog them and give them certain kinds of categories of are they things from the past, or are they expectations of the future? Because future expectation oftentimes creates a lot of anxiety for us. Now, an important distinction in enlightenment, of course, enlightened beings are generative and envision the future. Envisioning and generating the future is different from fantasizing and living in the future. Because in order to be in the here and now, to generate a new future, you have to be in the here and now. And you have to mind down on a much more subtle level to your core creativity. Okay, any other questions? Is creativity a form of intelligence? It is definitely a form, I would call it creative intelligence, in the same way Daniel Goleman, Dr. Daniel Goleman from Harvard University, wrote the book Emotional Intelligence. Emotional intelligence is the intelligence of having healthier and more creative emotional access. So, is creativity intelligent? Yes, but it's not mental or cognitive intelligence. Creative intelligence at its core is connecting to the body and to the nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system. That's the part of the nervous system that quiets down from the sympathetic, which is fight, flight, or freeze. And in the polyvagal nervous system, the goal is to move from being overly vibrated and stimulated to quieting down and taking that nervous system offline and bringing online the more spacious, the more healing and relaxed nervous system, which is the parasympathetic nervous system. So there is creative intelligence for sure, because quantum scientists have been struggling with this quandary from the beginning, which is, if the Big Bang created all of this, the dolphins in the ocean and the whales in the sea and the birds in the sky and the trees and the streams and the volcanoes that produced the Fiji and Hawaiian Islands and the incredible amount of species in nature. If all that came from the Big Bang, well, what created the Big Bang? And so for me, creative intelligence is mining into that wisdom. Again, I can't say I know what created the Big Bang, but from a place of core creativity, what I trust is creation is so creative, like creative intelligence, creative energy is so creative. It always was, it is, and always will be, that it was able to create the Big Bang. So creation created itself. Possibly. I say that possibly facetiously because, I don't know, it's something I wonder about all the time. I say, creation must be so creative. It created all this. Like last night before I went to bed, I was watching Apple TV and there's whales and dolphins swimming. It looks like the Hawaiian Islands. And the last thought I had before I went to sleep was, creation must be so creative. That creativity created creation. That's how creative the power of creativity is. And core creativity is what creates what's fresh and original and what's new. At another talk sometime, I'll talk about what's called generative and secondary creativity. But core creativity is fresh, it's original, it's seeing the unseen, it's hearing the unheard. It's venturing into going outside the box. It's venturing into territory someone hasn't ventured into. Being willing to take the risk to go there. Okay, I gotta close this up. It was a delight to be with all of you this morning, and I look forward to a future talk. And you can reach me at ronaldalexander.com or corecreativity.com. My first book is Wise Mind, Open Mind. And you can find out my second book, which will be coming out in June. It's called Core Creativity, The Mindful Path to Unlocking Your Creative Self. And it'll be published by Roman and Littlefield. And it's being released this June, and it'll be on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and all of those internet portals. And it's a fabulous book. I'm very, very excited about it, very proud about it. And it's going to distill, it has like at least 20 different meditations helping you to get into your own creativity. And then it has small vignettes of notable creatives that I interviewed for the book in film, music, and television. So thank you. Namaste. It was a delight to be here. All the best. See you, as Siddhartha says, hopefully somewhere down on the river of time. Namaste.